put yourself in this position and tell me what you would do. You're at Biketoberfest or any bike week event. The vibes are good, people are having a good time, Harleys are revving up, and overall everybody is enjoying themselves, but then you come across a guy like this, who's completely plastered. He throws his leg over his motorcycle, he can't keep his balance, his kickstand is down, and he's trying to ride off. What do you do in this situation? Well, that's the question that I'm going to post for y'all because I want to hear your opinion, of course, and I'm going to give you mine. After a video, got quite a bit of traction, and we've seen another content creator catch all of this, and that content creator, I think, is unjustifiably getting some flack for the way he handled himself. Of course, other people are a little bit more understanding, I guess, but there is some things that you could do if you see somebody like this. But if you make the wrong move in a situation like this, especially in a state like Florida, you could find yourself on the wrong end of a news headline, or you could be facing theft as well. So some things to definitely consider here, and I'll throw in one of those twists with this specific story or a situation like this, so you get a good idea of what you can and cannot do in a situation like this. Of course, I want to hear your opinion, whatever it might be. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So CycleDrag, who visits all of these different bike events, actually caught this all on camera. So there's a biker backing out of a spot, and it clearly takes him way too long. He's completely plastered, obliterated, and he has no business being on his motorcycle. And so as he backs out of the spot, CycleDrag, he notices, hey, your kickstand is down. And he does say something to him like, hey, can I get you a Uber home? Hey, your kickstand's down. Hey, man, it's not worth it. And he's kind of questioning himself like, what else can I do in this situation? And that's a good question to ask in Florida because, and I imagine a lot of states, because technically, if you take somebody's property without their consent, even for a few minutes, it could technically be considered theft. Unless it's like a medical emergency, you have to be really careful with these things. So I imagine with this guy, saying, oh, I'm totally fine, whatever, he wasn't going to give consent to CycleDrag to say, yeah, man, here's my keys, I'll call an Uber. At worst, the worst situation too is that you could actually be charged with battery if some kind of confrontation then plays out. You try to take their keys, and then all of a sudden they start fighting back, you start fighting them. Now it's a completely different situation. But here's what could save you, them, and somebody else in this situation. In Florida, there is a law, right, that states you can do a citizen's arrest if that person is breaching the peace. And courts have consistently found that DUIs are a breach of peace. So technically, yes, he could have taken his keys away from him if he believed that he was impaired. Now, here's the thing. You got to call the cops immediately. You got to tell them, hey, this is what happened. This is what's going on. I'm holding this person. You guys need to come here. If it got physical, of course, you're going to want to have proof of how this interaction went down, which CycleDrag did have that. By the way, this is no condemnation of him, right? The guy that's on the motorcycle is the one making these decisions. I'm just letting you guys know if you ever are confronted with the same situation, what you could or could not do, but every state might be different too. So this ain't no legal advice, just give you an idea of how these things could play out. But here's something to consider. Here's an interesting and kind of sobering fact though. If you're thinking about stopping somebody in a situation like this, what you need to know is 29% of all motorcycle fatalities actually involve alcohol of some kind. And riders, according to some statistics by the Highway Department, I believe, actually state that motorcyclists tend to have a higher BAC than what drunk car drivers do. It's kind of a part of the culture, unfortunately. I say that because, obviously people want to have a good time, and I'm not opposed to that. But when you put other people at risk, you're putting yourself at risk too. That's where the line has to be drawn. And there's just too many easy ways to get home now, right? You don't have to call a taxi or be in some, state that actually supports taxis and all that kind of stuff. Uber, all these kind of ride-sharing programs exist for a reason. So there's probably less of an excuse than there's ever been for people to be driving drunk. And in Florida, they always rank in like one of the top 3 states with motorcycle fatalities. And out of those that happen in Florida, they're about 40% of the time alcohol is involved. Of course, big time, bike events like Daytona, Biketoberfest, are a contributing factor for sure. But the last thing we want to see is these events shut down, right? We don't need more of things working against the motorcycle community. We need more of these things happening. Now, people are going to make stupid decisions, right? You can't hold millions of people accountable between all of the events that happen in the United States for the actions of some, but we see it just like with gun control. They do the same exact thing. They will try to do it at some point. Again, I can't tell you what you can and cannot do, but depending on the state, depending on the laws, you may be able to utilize that citizen's arrest. And hey, that biker may not like you too much right then, but when they sober up and they realize, holy crap, this dude probably just saved me or somebody else, or at the very least, they saved me from getting a huge fine and my license suspended and everything else, they might be thanking you later instead of kind of hating on you. You just got to protect yourself, of course, right, with video proof and all that kind of stuff. And also, sometimes it is best maybe to intervene in a situation like this. I mean, when this biker rode away, it was clear that he had no business being on this bike. Trying to give them an out while keeping the situation as calm as possible, calling the cops, maybe trying to get somebody, if you're with somebody, trying to get them to call the cops while you sit there and talk to them, just kind of cordially, like nothing's going on. They may face a situation that they don't want to be in, right? Because technically, if you have a leg over a bike, if the keys are in the bike and you're on the bike and you're drunk, technically that's drunk driving, at least in Florida. I think it works like that in a lot of states. But regardless, so if you call the cops, they come there, that person might get in trouble or arrested or whatever, but at least they didn't kill themselves or somebody else, right? Taking the keys might be an option, probably the last option. But again, if it gets physical, that's where you want to remember that you could be held liable in this situation too. So it's really a fine line between being a hero and being handcuffed, right? But then there's another layer, right? So in Florida and in free states, you have concealed carriers. So if this guy, CycleDrag, if he actually went to go take keys and this biker felt threatened, even though he shouldn't have a gun on him, at least at that moment, whenever he's drunk and out and about, if he decided to pull a gun then at that point, could be a bad situation. If somebody in this situation sees that you're carrying and then they tell the cops, oh, I felt threatened by this person, then it could be a bad situation. Concealed carry is always going to be the best option for sure, but you got to be careful about who you approach in Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, all of the free states, right? Midwest, pretty much anywhere that's not California, New York, Chicago, and some of the other kind of lunatic, liberal-run cities, you need to be really careful about how you approach and who you approach in those situations too. That's just another layer to it, man. So here's the moral question. You see a brother, and this really is truly a brotherhood, right? There's a lot of most of the motorcycle community is really, really tight-knit. And so you got to consider sometimes the best thing to do isn't always the legal thing to do. Sometimes not doing anything could haunt you for the rest of your life. There you go. There's my opinion, but I'd love to hear what you guys would do if you're ever confronted with a situation like this, or maybe you've been in one yourself. Let me know down below if you like what I do. Consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, holding down.